Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and Disney fires 700 employees.
Yes. We probably know why, but good. But
Oh, I thought you were going to tell the next story. I was just waiting to comment on it.
I guess Hailey Bieber sells Rhode makeup brand, which might actually help Justin Bieber with his financial woes. But we'll see. Maybe he's even deeper than that, or maybe his whole craziness stems from something else.
Okay, do you want to start with pop culture, or you want to start with politics today?
Pop culture, I guess.
Okay,
So YouTube doesn't get angry?
We'll do a few pop culture stories, and then we'll go heavy into politics because the morning is tending to turn to a lot of pop culture, and I want the night to be more politics, maybe. Okay, let's do it.
Well, this one kind of verges on politics.
I don't think so, not at all.
So, cosmetic brand company e.l.f. acquires Hailey Bieber's Rhode beauty brand for $1 billion. And this morning you had no idea what those words meant.
What?
Rhode, e.l.f.
Yeah, I knew what they were because I did the research, but I misplaced the names a little bit.
But you don't use makeup.
No.
I know a lot about makeup.
Yeah, but I did know quite a bit after doing the research. I knew her makeup brand got big from her lip gloss, which came with a phone case, which you could put in, which was a genius marketing strategy by her, and it turned the company from a nothing company to $1 billion company within 3 years.
Well, it didn't come with. She actually sold those phone cases separately, which made her more money. But why I say it can turn political is because Justin Bieber, the connections to the Sean P. Diddy Combs, the issues he has, the financial woes he's going through, and the way he's been acting lately might indicate that.
I just wanted to check the sound because I had a new sound set up where I rewired everything.
Yeah, if the sound isn't working, let us know, please, in the comments.
I think it should be better because there was a constant buzzing I noticed on a lot of our older episodes that only when the volume was all the way up, though. But let's get back to the story. Sorry.
But do you think, you were saying this morning that this might actually help Justin Bieber stop looking or acting as crazy, but it might, or not?
My thesis on the whole Justin Bieber thing was they brought him in at a very young age, abused him, and then when he became of age, he had too much dirt on them, so they needed to film him doing things to probably, my guess is, children, because it's something so far out there, which they did to him, that now they have him on video, and that's why he's spiraling. We're kind of going to find out here because his wife now has $1 billion. They're not in any money troubles whatsoever anymore.
Well, the company, but yes.
What was tried to be portrayed by Bieber is he's having money troubles, so he's spiraling out of control. If he continues to spiral out of control, now that they have $1 billion, it's obviously something else.
Yes, and I'm sure he's traumatized either way. As if the speculation is true or not, I'm sure he still has a lot of issues going on because people that start that young in their careers in the entertainment industry usually don't turn out so well. Yeah. It's rare that people don't have bad experiences when they're that young and shoved into an industry that chews them up.
Well, we were talking about Taylor Swift's father managing her career somewhat relatively good, and so was Miley Cyrus's parents. They really sheltered her from a lot of the bad things. Justin Bieber's parents, on the other hand, were something completely different. Yeah,
for the longest time, he had a single mother, didn't really have any relation with his father. It was his mom might have been looking for, again, speculation, fame or a way to make him famous or money because they had money issues. So.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely be keeping an eye on Justin Bieber anytime he's on TMZ or whatever because it's going to be a good indication now of do they really have dirt on him, which I think is a good possibility. Nobody's really talking about that. If they did bring him in at a young age and do things to him, once he became of age, they want to have leverage on him. So they're going to need him to do some incredulous acts, and they're going to,
And that's how those predatory circles work, and that's how it continues to be perpetrated.
Well, that's how victims become abusers, even more so than in a natural sense, which usually happens in life. But when it's in an industry such as this, in a predatory industry, they almost forcefully want to turn the victims into abusers because that absolves them of any future.
And gives them further power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go into The Karate Kid. It was a dramatic failure this weekend.
Yeah, so you've been following this one pretty closely. I have no involvement with Karate Kid because it came out before I was young.
And we talked about a bunch of streaming movies that Netflix is making and stuff, and they're making like $250 million movies, $100 million movies. This Karate Kid would have been perfect to go straight to streaming. I think it was a major failure, the fact that it went to theaters and they made a bad movie.
But maybe they didn't want it competing with Cobra Kai.
Because they would have known once the filming was done how good it was. If it wasn't movie quality ready, they should have just took it straight to streaming. Because now it's going to get a bad reputation. So by the time it makes it to streaming, it's going to not have as much fanfare.
Yeah. And then also Lilo and Stitch is ruling again with 63 million. The one positive thing for Disney.
And that's domestically, because we're about to get into the worldwide box office numbers. Why don't we go there now? And they're pretty incredible. Oh, no, it's the next article.
It's within this one. It's the same one. Let me find it. It was down here.
I have the numbers right here. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
It was 611 million globally for Lilo and Stitch and 354 million globally for Mission Impossible. Even though Mission Impossible's number 2 big dog, it is doing very well, and I can see why Tom Cruise was happy with being second place next to Lilo and Stitch. Because you're still making a ton of money.
And it's a very long movie, too. So it's harder to get audiences through the door and then to sit there and stay.
Well, and it's not necessarily, kids aren't necessarily going to watch the movie either, so.
And there's less rewatchability for Mission Impossible.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into Ryan Coogler says he never considered.
So Ryan Coogler says he never considered making a Sinners sequel, wanted to get away from the franchise films. I wanted it to be a holistic and finished thing. And
that's good. That's what I think he wants to do, make really good, more epic style movies that are all enclosed or all encompassed within the one and done. Mm-hmm. This thing is sequels. I think he will make a sequel, but they're going to have to throw a ton of cash at him. And I think I think they definitely will, because Sinners looks like it's set to kind of become a cult classic. It's already kind of done that in theaters with its reputation of not falling off week after week at the box office. Mm-hmm. A lot of people still haven't seen it, like me, but I want to see it. So when it comes on streaming, I'm sure it's going to hit big. Mm-hmm.
And he also, I'm sure he's had his fill of sequels and franchise stuff because he was working in Marvel as well, a lot.
Yeah, but this is definitely whether he wants to make sequels or whether he doesn't, it's better for him to say he doesn't want to make sequels. He wants to make one-offs, because if they ever want to get this movie made again, a sequel, mm-hmm. they're going to have to throw a lot more cash in negotiations. Yes. So it gives them a better negotiating hand, I think.
Yes, and I'm not a fan of his work, but I guess I'll watch Sinners. I'm not a fan of zombie movies either, but I'm willing to give it a chance. You did work in movie production like me, and you should watch the behind the scenes of Sinners, because I was pretty impressed at some movie technology they used. They used classical... Practical?
I would say classical film cameras in a very unique way, where they used 2 different kinds of film grain, mm-hmm. one that filmed longer, one that filmed higher, and then they combined them. So it was pretty interesting. And that's what made that movie cost so much, because it should have been like a $40 million movie maybe, and even that was high. It was a $90 million movie because they used special camera rigs, so they would be able to match the footage and make the much wider shot than is normally possible.
Interesting. Yeah. So in the comments, let us know of all of these films. If you watched Lilo and Stitch, Sinners, Karate Kid, if anybody wants to go see that, Mission Impossible, and what you thought about them. Because I really want to know. We watched Mission Impossible and Karate and Lilo and Stitch. Karate Kid, I guess we'll wait for streaming. And then this one, also we're going to have to wait for streaming now. But I don't think it was as big in Mexico, which is where we are right now.
Okay, let's transition over to the politics, just because in my morning show, I did cover all the exact same pop culture stories. I just like to front load a little bit of pop culture in our night show so we don't get...
YouTube angry at us.
Yeah, get YouTube angry at us.
And quickly, Walker says, hello guys, everything looks good. Thank you for letting us know. And Rafa says, yes, sounds good. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. And we've been trying
we always forget to ask.
I always forget to say
Rafa's the one asking our audience for us. Thank you. Yeah,
I always feel awkward saying it, but thank you.
I don't at all. We need the subscribers.
We do need them, especially on this channel, which is English and smaller. And we've been trying to push out our Pedro Pascal story, because I feel like nobody talks about it.
But we have no subscriber base to push it out.
Exactly.
Okay, let's go into Disney is firing several hundred employees, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into politics after that.
Sure. So, according to Reuters, Disney laying off several hundred in film, TV, and finance. Let me read a little bit. Media company Walt Disney is laying off several hundred employees in film, television, and corporate finance, a source familiar with the matter said on Monday. The layoffs affect multiple teams around the world, including film and TV marketing, TV publicity, and casting and development, the source said. Well, of course, with the marketing they've done for the Fantastic Four and also the casting of Pedro Pascal, Rachel Zegler, etc., I'm not surprised that they're having to fire them.
Well, I think this is a good time, and it works out well for Disney to fire people right now. The fact that they're not... One of the other stories, which I covered on my morning show, was Disney kind of making a shift away from LGBTQ plus stuff. They still have a little bit at the parks, but this year it's not nearly as pronounced as usual. Mm-hmm. Usually this would cause a huge protest amongst the left and pressure them to really put LGBTQ front and center. But if they're firing a bunch of people and they're firing a bunch of progressives, they're less likely to speak up, the ones that do remain.
Yes.
So it's kind of they're able to maybe transition or shift their company by firing people at the same time.
So Disney and other companies are reshaping their business strategies in response to the migration of cable TV audiences to streaming platforms, and because they're terrified that now people have realized how stupid woke and progressive policies are. In 2023, Disney cut 7,000 jobs as part of an effort to save $5.5 billion. Also laid off nearly 6% in the ABC News Group and Disney Entertainment Networks in March. And I mean, will it help them?
Well, this is going to be a huge shift for Disney, and I think this is the first shift because they are financially struggling, but AI is now coming in as well. Mm-hmm. The whole film industry is going to be transitioned into something completely new, especially the animated divisions and things like this. Yeah. And storytelling, you're going to be able to do a whole lot more with a whole lot smaller of a team. My guess is this first round strikes the fear in the heart of the progressives. They're getting rid of a lot of them. They're going to want to keep a lot of hardworking conservatives on staff that are
just hardworking people.
Well, yeah, hardworking people in general that are really committed to a new vision
and to improving the company and learning from their mistakes, which is what they haven't done for the who knows how long, 10 years now. More.
I mean, having hundreds of progressive people or thousands of progressive people employed by your company can work when you're overstaffed, but when you're trying to run a skeleton crew, which is, I think that's what Disney's going to turn into, you really need the best of the best talent. You got to look past skin color, past everything else, and just look at the work itself and how these people are able to manage teams. Are they able to be there on time? Things like this.
Yes.
Okay, let's go into what's next. Keir Starmer.
Oh, we're going like actual politics.
Yeah, we're going full on.
So James Melville says, a one-nation experiment in open borders? Well, no more. Today, this government is shutting down the lab. The experiment is over. We will take back control of our borders. Yet another lie. Yesterday, 1,200 migrants crossed the channel, the English channel.
And this was the biggest day of migrant crossings in British history, I believe. So the fact that he's saying no more, no more, no more, it's not hard to do it. Donald Trump showed you can do it within I think it was 30 days. That border was a ghost town. They're actually laying off a lot of border agents, intake people. They tore down the intake facilities because that border is so shut down. So he can do the same thing Trump does. The fact that he is lending mouth service to it, but they're not taking any actual action, is really turning the public against him more and more. We're going to have another story about him trying to prepare Britain and the British people for war. They don't want to go to war, especially when you've been against them for the last 10 years on all your basic policies.
Some would call this ironic.
I think by November he's going to be out of office, and he just took office, so that's kind of saying a lot.
A one-nation experiment in open borders, conducted on a country that voted for control. Well, no more. Today, this Labour government is shutting down the lab. The experiment is over. We will deliver what you've asked for time and again, and we will take back control of our borders.
And when he says that, he's not talking about a complete shutdown or anything else. They need a complete shutdown of their borders, reevaluate everything, see what kind of migrants they actually do need to let in the country, what they don't, and recommit to the citizenry they do have.
And it wasn't a one nation experiment. I mean, it's all of Europe, all of the European Union, and even them that left, they continued with those policies of, importing, let's just call it the global south, or people that do not go with and accept your culture or your ways of life, and then destroy it like we're seeing in Paris right now.
And he was just talking about they voted for this. He's talking about Brexit here and how they voted for Brexit. What he recently did a couple of weekends ago is completely turned his back on the British people. He basically signed away Britain's sovereignty, signed a bunch of contracts with the EU saying they're going to adhere to all the EU legislation, all the things that when they were part of the EU that they were adhering to before. They're now going to do that again, only they're not going to be part of the EU, so they're going to have to follow all the rules, but they're not going to get a vote at the table. So it's even worse than not being part of the EU. You're now not part of the EU. You have to follow all their laws, and you don't get a vote or a say in what happens. Mm-hmm. He's also committed to completely funding the EU nationalist army, which they want to create to go against Russia now. Canada's doing the same. That's absolutely ridiculous. Anything Canada commits to a military should be committed to the U.S. and with the U.S. because the U.S. has protected them for well over 100 years now. So they should understand their alliances are more with the U.S. and Donald Trump is far more anti-war than the EU is right now. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Climate change?
Yeah, whatever's next on the list here.
So apparently this is from Wide Awake Media, in order to tackle climate change, bioethicist S. Matthew Liao calls for humans to be artificially engineered to develop an intolerance to meat. If we eat less meat, we could significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, some people would be willing to eat less meat, but they lack the willpower. Human engineering could help. We could artificially induce intolerance to meat, and in this way, we can create an aversion to eating eco-unfriendly food.
And now this gentleman's at the TED Talk. The first time I played a clip for him, he was talking about the same type of things, but it was just on a random podcast or something like that.
It was a round table, yeah.
Or interview. So now he's at a full TED Talk where he's going to have much more influence. These ideas are spreading more and more. We just seen how much meat cost in Canada the other day.
Like $75 for 4 steaks.
Small steaks, yeah. $75. They're implementing this plan in Canada already. And I also believe he may mention blocking out the sun with Bill Gates, which the EU has already approved. If you don't remember that story, basically they want to release chemicals into the atmosphere over Great Britain to block out the sun. Great Britain doesn't get a lot of sun to begin with.
It's already blocked.
And we did cover other stories about the global poles starting to form more and more ice every winter. So
regenerating the ice caps.
Climate change is one of the biggest problems that we face today. Millions could suffer hunger, diseases, coastal flooding as a result of climate change. We may be beyond the point of no return. Scientists believe that we have no choice but to consider geoengineering. This is large-scale manipulation of the Earth, such as...
Did you notice how he was going to say public? He was going to say large-scale manipulation of the Earth.
Oh, my God.
He almost said of the public
You're
or the
going to do
people.
large-scale manipulation of the Earth. And this is where we're talking about the engineering and blocking out the sun. This can only turn bad. There's no major reason for this. This whole climate change hysteria is really going to a level that could cause far more damage than whatever. If the planet heats up, cold kills more people every year than heat. So why are we worrying about the heat still?
And also, I mean, the hysteria part and the having no effect on it. I mean, for the past 60 years, they've been going on with this hysteria, be it climate change, global warming, whatever, that has caused population to decline in a drastic way, because a lot of people are saying, I don't want to have kids because it's a burden on the planet or because we don't want to leave this planet for them.
And on my morning show, we watched Ursula, what's her name?
Ursula von der Leyen.
Ursula von der Leyen, that one of the head people in the EU, and she was talking about they need to pre-bunk the media, pre-bunk the population. Basically, we need to spread our lies to the people before they have a chance to spread their own.
Spread their own, like to tell the truth.
And I've been seeing ever since like that messaging had been coming out for the last month, and then she said it outright at that conference. And I've just been seeing a flood of propaganda going against actual science. Real science is starting to come out now. They no longer have the consensus. They like to say they do, but now they're basically just trying to tell lies to hold on to that brainwashed little bit of public they had.
And for the longest time, they had control of being able to, silence scientists or silence people that were dissenting to the general opinion with facts or with evidence. But now we have social media and we have YouTube and other ways of these same scientists that used to be very highly accredited and highly believed to get the actual message out without being, having to bow down to the science overlords.
Well, I think a lot of it had to
Scientific
do. I think a
elite.
lot of it had to do with the funding, and it's only been just over 100 days that Trump's been in office. But the amount of defunding he's done through USAID, liberals like to say, "Oh, it's nothing compared to the whole budget." Yeah, but the impact that those billions and billions of dollars were having on capturing science, capturing the media, you now see the entire thing crumbling, and they're sending out people like this on TED Talk stages out of absolute desperation, and they sound like lunatics.
Yes.
Spraying sulfate aerosols into the ozone layer in order to increase the reflectivity of the planet. But geoengineering is very, very risky. We have never attempted these technologies on such a large scale. So we could end up destroying the entire ozone layer.
Let's do it anyway.
I want to consider a class of solutions that have never been considered before. Human engineering. It involves the biomedical modification of human beings. I'll give 4 examples.
I mean, they're kind of already doing it.
Okay, we're about to mess with the atmosphere, and it can totally
rid
destroy
of
the
the-
atmosphere.
yeah.
But let's
get rid of the
instead of
ozone
not
layer.
do it, let's genetically modify humans.
Yes.
That's even
That's a better
crazier.
solution.
It's like 2 bad ideas.
They're already kind of doing it anyways.
Here's one. 18% of greenhouse gas emissions come from livestock farming.
That's actually not true, and those studies have been debunked, but whatever.
So if we eat less meat, we could significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, some people would be willing to eat less meat, but they lack the willpower. Human engineering could help.
They're even laughing at them.
Just as some people are naturally intolerant to milk or crayfish, like myself, we could artificially induce mild intolerance to meat. By
Why are they cheering? So, like, eat vegetarian, eat less meat, be less healthy, feel worse, or eat meat and feel better.
Oh, no, you're not allowed to eat meat. They're going to genetically modify you without your consent. And then they're going to block out the ozone layer so you
sun.
can't get the
I'm gonna
sun.
block the sun.
stimulating our immune system against common bovine proteins. And in this way, we can create an aversion to eating eco-unfriendly food. And we can do this, for example, by having meat patches, kind of like nicotine patches. People.
This is
get your
good enough
meat
to be
patch.
a freaking meme, this guy.
Yes.
Straight from the CCP to the EU to
Yeah.
you. Like,
Come get your meat patch. You're addicted to meat.
And then wear these patches before they go out for dinner to curb their enthusiasm for eating meat.
is that a TED Talk or is that a comedy club?
Yeah, it's not a stand-up routine, even though it should be.
Okay, let's
I
go.
mean, that's where they want us. That's what they want us to do.
Yeah, and that they have a good possibility of that actually happening in Europe. As much as we laugh at it, and in Canada and Australia, as of right now, Donald Trump's taking them in a different direction in the United States, which is good. Mexico, where we live, has freedom through chaos, at least for now.
Yes.
So that's a good thing. I didn't write the story in here because I didn't have time, but I'm just going to bring it up really quickly. They had Polish elections today. They went the right way. They had an LGBTQ globalist EU supporter versus a traditional Catholic Trump supporter. He's also a populist. He's a boxer as well, amateur boxer, and he wants to move Poland in the same direction the U.S. is going, same direction Hungary is going, same direction as Italy is going. So this was a huge win for the conservative or right-wing movement within Europe, especially after what happened in Romania recently. I think they were a little scared to really try to steal this election too, because they've stole so many elections in the EU already. They did one in France, they did one in Romania, then they did one, they eliminated Conor McGregor from running in Ireland, and then there was one more as well. I can't.
France? Marine Le Pen?
No, France, Romania. Anyway.
Poland? So Walker says, Guy, a suggestion for the channel, a video about the mess in Paris yesterday.
Yeah, I think we got a clip of it coming up here.
Oh, okay.
But the clip I actually got was from the Canadian media, and this is going to show you the amount of propaganda coming out from the Canadian media. And not just within Canada. They're really trying to shuffle their influence into other countries. Why don't you find that article?
Okay.
Did I have it?
We have a few more comments, but okay.
Did I have it written down there, though? CTV, right there at the end. Second to the last article.
Yes. Let me try to, so keep talking.
We'll go right into this article. So CTV calls what was happening in France last night a celebration. You can't, yeah. So what they were saying was this is a sports celebration that got a little bit out of control. And this was all over Canadian media, by the way. They refused to talk about these were actual riots. They were framing this as a sporting event. Yeah.
I don't know if they let us show it, but
Oh, that's it. Yeah, let's just stop it there.
we can't show direct violence. But I mean, you've seen the videos, you get the idea. But
That clip wasn't from the actual CTV. There was another clip from CTV where they were talking about it. They were showing less violent things, and they were trying to frame it
Do you want me to find
as no, it's fine. We got too much. Why don't you continue with the comments though?
Sure. So Walker says, my blessed God, about the meat thing. And Rafa says, I've always found TED Talks to be really pretentious, cringe, and biased, of course. And it has become that way. It used to be more like when it first started, like an actual, way to get ideas out there and for people to come and discuss things, more like a think tank. But even the creator of TED Talk says that he now disassociates himself from the brand and from the thing because it's become biased, cringe, and pretentious.
Yeah, this was like a liberal think tank, and they were trying. It's kind of like a top-down think tank where they're trying to tell the people what to think. What the right wing, conservatives and the right wing kind of did was use YouTube and other social media platforms to kind of go from the ground up. So they propose their ideas and they bounce them off one another. Then they use their audience for research and to put in different variables into the equation, and it's really a grassroots, bottom-up type of think tank. So it builds trust with not only the audience but the general public, and it allows their ideas to be challenged. So ultimately, you end up with a much better idea or a much better concept at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Then Walker says he wants to significantly reduce the pollution, tell UN politicians to hold meetings online, and tell Taylor Swift to stop flying everywhere, even to go to the bathroom. Tell the CCP to stop polluting, and India as well. I'll add that in. Yes, that's not the way to do it. The ones that want to do the most net zero, climate change, zero pollution things are the countries that usually don't have the most pollution.
Oh, the next story is a good one.
The UK?
Yeah.
So back to the media and just in general, everyone trying to change history and change the way things actually are. From Wide Awake Media again says UK school children are not being taught that Stonehenge, so those
Stonehenge.
In case people don't know, those stone things that are in the UK was built by black people, and the Roman Emperor Nero married a trans woman.
Now, woke schools teaching pupils that Stonehenge was built by black people, Alex.
Yes, so children are being taught that Stonehenge, this is a story in Mail Online today, Stonehenge was built by black people and the Roman Emperor Nero married a trans woman. These are the stories that are being, and they're also being told in pro-transgender lessons that slaves had their body parts altered, and it was a form of gender transition. I mean, you couldn't make it.
I mean, in Africa, they do FGM, but that's very different.
No,
and I can't say the word.
But they, this was actually very common.
What?
To castrate.
Yes.
But it was not to transition, not to transition them. Yeah, it was done for other reasons. But that also being said, he may have very well married somebody that was transgendered, but that wasn't called transgendered at that time. But for them to promote this in school and everything else is crazy. Nero was a bit crazy of a...
Yes, I know. But there's also, I mean, they've also tried to reimagine Cleopatra, reimagine a lot of historical figures and say also the whole argument that, like, in Roman times, they used to, like, there were gay people. No, they weren't. It was a very different form of what was happening, and it was mostly control and coercion of the younger people by adults.
Well, the most of the stuff what they're saying obviously isn't happening, and it's a lie. But even if something, some fringe situation did happen, the fact that you're putting that up front as part of the education curriculum and you're putting sexuality into history in a big way, that's not what you need to learn in school. That's for parents to teach their children and things like that. It goes directly against a lot of different people's belief system, such as Catholics, Christians, Jewish people, and Muslims. And we know how they love their Muslims in the UK. So the fact that they're teaching them things like this, I'm sure the Muslims aren't so happy. Okay, do you want to go into the next story here?
Sure.
Trump fast tracks Utah's uranium mine.
Hold on, I'm grabbing just one more thing.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Yes, so Trump fast tracks Utah uranium mine, but industry revival may wait for higher prices.
And this is huge. So we've talked quite a few times now about him fast tracking mini nuclear power plants for the Google, Facebook, and other big tech sectors, data centers. So they're not going to have to jump through all the normal hoops because they need to compete on an AI level. But the big question was, where were they going to get that uranium? 50% of the world's uranium comes from Russia currently. They have a monopoly on that sector. So if you want to create massive nuclear power plants and things like this, which I think is really the real green energy, which we should have invested in the last 10 years.
But people got scared.
People didn't get scared. I think propagandists really didn't want us to go that direction.
I know, but because and that made people scared.
I don't think people were scared.
About nuclear?
Yeah.
I mean, after what happened at the Hiroshima and the other one?
Nuclear, well, when you look at the statistics, nuclear power has killed less people than any other form of industry.
Yes, I know, but the promotion of the things that happened made people wary of using that technology.
What I'm saying is when they were actually polled and asked, and when I talked to people, everybody was going the direction for the last 10 years of nuclear, but the government just tried to put out this thing that people are scared. We don't want to go that direction. But when you actually looked and when you actually talked to people, they were never scared of nuclear. That's the thing. Okay. Do you want to say anything on this, or you want to read some of the article?
I can read some of the article if you want. So in southeastern Utah desert, famous for red rock arches and canyon labyrinths, the long-dormant uranium mining industry is looking to revive under President Donald Trump. Hundreds of abandoned uranium mines dot the West's arid landscapes, hazardous reminders of the promise and peril of nuclear power during the Cold War. Now, one mine that the Trump administration fast-tracked for regulatory approval could reopen for the first time since 1980s. And I mean, even here, they do the whole hazardous reminders of promise and peril of nuclear power. Like, they're doing it in the same article. Normally, it would have taken months, if not years, for the U.S. Bureau of Land Management to review plans to reopen a project like Anfield Energy's Velvet Wood mine 35 miles south of Moab. But the Bureau's regulators greenlit the project in just 11 days under a national energy emergency Trump has declared that allows expedited environmental reviews for energy projects. And I mean, in the article themselves, itself. They're doing the whole, oh, it's scary.
Yeah, and I just over the last 10 years, I kept saying this over and over and over. Nuclear was the way to go. It was the safest way. It produces the most amount of energy. The dialogue didn't change until AI came into the situation. The amount of power that needed to be generated by AI and the fact that it was the tip of the spear when it came to real warfare and things like this, that's when everything changed. Now every country is completely on board with nuclear. I remember just a couple of years ago having conversations with liberals that would just not admit this. And I was saying, well, AI is here now, so we're going to completely abandon green energy or what you know of it. And they were like, no. We're going to keep investing in that, and then we might use a little bit of nuclear. I said, if you look at the statistics, statistically, you cannot generate even 1/100th of the power you need with green energy to supply these data centers. So you're going to have to go nuclear. Even traditional forms of energy won't be able to efficiently supply the data centers. The only way to get a proper amount of energy for these data centers to consume is nuclear. So I knew it was going to change. I knew everything was going to shift, and now we're here. The best idea is to go with these mini nuclear reactors because they can be built fairly quickly. If you're building full nuclear power plants, even if they're fast-tracked, maybe 5 years, but an average nuclear power plant can take up to 10 years, especially in the US because of the regulations. So if you can build something that can just supply an AI center, well, now you can have proof of concept. You can show the safety regulations and everything else, and then hopefully spread that out to different sectors in the civilian population.
Yes, and also, I mean, on the same point, Walker says, the bad propaganda about nuclear energy came after Chernobyl, which makes no sense. That happened in a non-Western country due to corruption, and the West has to indulge in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they more wanted to use it to go pivot and to go the other way with the other option,
well,
which benefits a lot of people more financially.
Yeah, there's a big problem with nuclear, and it offers a lot of freedom because the energy becomes at such a cheap cost, especially with modern nuclear and things like this. Also, they don't want poor countries to have nuclear power plants like Africa and things like this. Russia and China are currently coming into Africa and other countries like this and offering to build nuclear power plants, which they now have the technology to do, which would offer a level of manufacturing and self-determination within countries that they just don't currently have. Mm-hmm. The West was trying to go into African countries and offer green energy, which would never make you manufacturing independent.
No, it wouldn't work. It doesn't work for developing countries or even for developed ones, as we're seeing.
No.
I mean, Spain just had a huge, massive blackout because they started relying on their clean green energy that doesn't work.
But the people would be able to, the green energy in Africa would basically supply people with energy in their homes and things like this. So at least they could virtue signal that they're making a difference. Mm-hmm. But the truth is Africa needs manufacturing.
Yes.
So.
And we've spoken about, I mean, like solar panels or some of the ideas for like green energy do work on an individual level. So if you live out in the middle of the desert or the country somewhere and want to be energy independent yourself, then okay, having solar panels actually works, maybe sometimes even returning energy to the grid. But even then, like the production of those solar panels end up like wasting and making more waste and more harmful chemicals for the environment than just not having them at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think my original theory was right. And my original theory about green energy, when I looked, because I always knew nuclear was the way to go, and then they were intentionally trying to steer people away from it. I figured that they were intentionally steering people away from nuclear because they were getting ready for a war. In a war, a nuclear power plant is actually a target. A green energy also provides a, what do you call it?
Escalating?
No.
Regulating?
It provides a decentralized grid, so you can't knock out homes that are individually powered by solar panels and wind and things like this. So if a war breaks out, usually the first place you bomb or you go after is the power grid. But if people have solar panels on their home, you'll be able to survive an attack and still maintain your individual electrical grid on each house if every house has solar panels. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah.
But speaking of energy and changing things, the Department of Energy accessed $3.7 billion in clean energy project grants.
And this is great because they need a transition. They're going to need to build nuclear. They're going to need to go after the oil sector again. They're going to have to reinvest that so they can transition into nuclear. The green energy sector it's proven to fail. If they invest in that, they're not going to be able to make that transition over to nuclear. If they reinvest in the old oil sector, that can provide enough energy until the nuclear sector gets online.
And to actually build it, because you just still need energy to build the energy alternative sources. Do you want me to read it, or are we good with that?
Yeah, well, I do want to say something about these factories that were built upon solar panels and things like this. Mm-hmm. This ended up being a very good idea. If a war does break out and you have a lot of these manufacturing facilities that do run off the sun, even though they might not be able to run at night and things like this, they will be able to run even if the power plants hit and they're separate from the grid, which is a good thing. So that's why I always said green energy was great if you're preparing for war. But it's funny how leftists embrace green energy, not realizing it's only good if...
Well, now they're embracing war as well. So
yeah, that's the thing.
The two latest ones they're in love with, and they want to keep perpetuating them. So Energy Secretary Chris Wright said Friday he canceled nearly $4 billion in project grants in another massive blow to clean energy and greenhouse gas emissions reduction efforts in the U.S. under President Donald Trump's administration. The grants, largely awarded during former President Joe Biden's final few months in the White House, were primarily for programs to capture carbon emissions and store them underground. Their targeted efforts span cleaner cement, natural gas, and more. Some of the 24 canceled awards include, and then there's the...
And yeah, this was fantastic as well because we've already seen this experiment go wrong. What happened to Germany? What happened to the EU? They're having outages on their power grids. Germany is completely screwed now. All their manufacturing is currently moving over to the U.S. Almost 50% has already moved there because they don't have enough energy. Number one, they blew up their own pipeline, which was Nord Stream 2. Russia and the United States were currently in negotiations to fix that pipeline. Germany said, if you fix it, we're going to sanction it. That was how you were getting clean, or that's how you were getting cheap energy for your manufacturing. Germany was the manufacturing base of the EU. It's absolutely insane. Then they shut down all their nuclear plants in Germany, and now they're trying to reopen coal plants because it's the only thing that they can do it in a fast measure.
And with all of these programs and grants and things with clean, green energy or whatever, you have to see who is an end beneficiary, what connections they have, are they actually going forward with the project, and also what these projects do, because we saw one of the carbon capturing things of storing them underground. They were actually wanting to chop up trees that were like being a hindrance to the carbon emissions, blah, 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 and store them underground. But what that would have resulted in is just culling a forest. That's what they wanted to do. That was one of the projects. I don't know if this specifically, but they spoke about that as well.
Well, the United States is moving in what I would say is a wartime footing, and they need to be in a wartime footing, not because they necessarily want to go to war, but it projects strength and says, we have enough energy, we have AI, we have a military manufacturing base, we produce our own steel, we manufacture our own military equipment, and we can do it in an expedient fashion. This projects strength or power. Strength through power?
Yes. Power through strength.
Peace through strength. Peace. This is how you get peace through strength. Not necessarily having to go bomb countries and things like this, but to just show your adversaries that you're actually ready in every single sector for war if it need to go there. Mm-hmm. So,
yes.
And that's what Russia's really showing right now. And the EU is not, which is crazy.
Speaking of net zero, so Mark Nixon says, how the F did this person get reelected? Even if Canada reached net zero tomorrow, it will make absolutely no difference globally. This is economically reckless. And
And Mark Carney's on board with all this. I believe she's going to read from his book, and he still refuses to back down from this. He'll go to Alberta, talk about how he wants to build pipelines. As soon as he leaves, he'll go on the national news and say the opposite thing.
And he'll also, like with his private Brookfield company, Brookfield Investment Management, which he moved to the U.S. so people would question it less. He also mostly just did a lot of investing and spending on building pipelines elsewhere around the world, but now he wants to cancel Canada's.
So here we are with a speech from the throne. There's a reference, as I said, 2 times, a reference to we will fight climate change. Yeah, I assume that Prime Minister Carney knows that we have a legal obligation to meet our Paris target. We know that last fall, as
Trump pulled out of the climate Paris Accord a long time ago. Canada could easily do the same. She's acting like this thing's legally binding. Nothing's binding. Simply pull out, start putting your people first, start putting in your energy manufacturing first, start using your natural resources to actually increase your GDP and increase the health and well-being of your citizens. They're doing
Which
exactly
they've completely
the opposite.
forgotten about.
Well, they haven't forgotten about it. They're using green energy as a cudgel to line their pockets and their buddies' pockets with...
Like Mark Carney.
Yeah.
at November 2024, the Commissioner for Environment and Sustainable Development said we were not on track to meet our 2030 target. This 2035 target had not been adopted at that point, but we weren't on track to meet the target for 2030. As at November 2024, total reductions come to 7% below 2005. So I look forward and I hope to hear from Prime Minister Carney how we are going to achieve our Paris commitments, which are legally binding. I put it to the Prime Minister, how will that be done? I want to quote from Mark Carney's book, Values, at page 273. Quote, the carbon budget to limit temperature rise to below catastrophic levels is rapidly being exhausted. If we had started in 2000, we could have hit the 1.5 degrees Celsius objective by halving emissions every 30 years. Now, we must have emissions every 10 years. If we wait another 4 years, the challenge will be to have emissions every year.
Okay, and let's just talk about the architecture Mark Carney built. He was the architect of the carbon policy on a global scale, and this was a way to tax citizens, tax businesses. The entire new economic liberal scheme to control the globe really evolved around these climate emissions and these climate taxes. And the fact that the U.S. kind of pulled out the rug from under him and exposed everything. He's just looking like a fool sticking to it. But this architecture was supposed to make trillions of dollars for not just him, but all of his companies, everybody in the World Economic Forum. And now they're just trying to hold this system together. Right now, their plan is to wait Donald Trump 3 years is what they're saying. Problem is, in the EU and all over the world, more and more conservatives and right-wings are taking power, such as in Romania, such as in Hungary, such as in Poland. Even though in Romania they didn't take power, he actually won the election. They had to steal it from him.
They just didn't let him.
So in 3 years, even if Donald Trump doesn't run again, it's most likely, I'm thinking a conservative is going to win, and he's going to have much more allies on a global basis. So. And
also, Canada already has a way to cut emissions by, their targets that Mark Carney was saying there. It's called the MAID program. So I'm sure they're going to kind of try to use the MAID program, which is Youth Space in Asia, to call the people themselves, because they're the biggest carbon emitters and they're on their way to want to use that probably to fulfill these targets as well. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a plan. That's just conjecture. I'm just saying that.
And right now, the oil is extremely cheap. The other day it was at $55 a barrel, I believe. So it's interesting that they had sanctioned Russia at $60 a barrel, and now the global price is below $60. It's at $55. Alberta sands can't even, they don't even manufacture oil until it's above $65 a barrel, because Canada gets their oil from the sand, and the extraction process costs more. So only when it's above $65 can Canada even sell its oil. Okay.
And Walker says the German intel agency knew that the environmental activists were Russian agents lobbying to close nuclear power plants to make Germany dependent on Russian gas.
And not just...
But they did nothing because xenophobia, racism, they've been bad since 45, etc.
Yeah, and I've been saying this for a decade now. And it's not just, it wasn't just Russians. It was when you look into this and investigate this, most of the green environmental organizations are actually funded out of China and Russia, and they knew it would weaken the West competitiveness, and that's what it was really about.
Which is not surprising.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of energy Canada turns out is nothing compared to Russia. Yet they're the equally sized countries, and they have a lot of oil and natural resources. Russia is gathering everything they can and selling that on the global market, where Canada is completely handicapped by its own legislation. So Walker's completely right.
Yes.
Okay, let's keep going.
So Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
So the Brit lad says, Keir Starmer locked up Tony Robinson to silence him and crush his spirit. The twist, Tommy is on the verge of exposing the deep-seated corruption within the prison system. I got a feeling he's only just getting started. So he sent him off to prison and now to silence him. And now he went there and saw it and is willing to speak up even louder about it.
And something that's similar that happened to somebody else was the guy that runs Breitbart, Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon was sent to prison kind of as a political prisoner under the Biden administration, and he was exposed to a lot of things going on in prison, and now he speaks up against it, and he has exposed a lot of things. So, and he's very powerful now that Trump is in office.
When the government decided to lock me in maximum security facilities for a civil offence, and I got talking to prison staff and interviewing day in, day out, hearing of what they face at the hands of out-of-control Islamic jihadist gangs, I knew that we had to make sure the public heard this anytime there's an attack. Today, we broke the news of the attack in Long Lartin. What you're about to hear now are recordings that are coming out of Long Lartin of the attacker screaming about his jihad and how it's not going to stop. Inshallah, it happens again and again and again. Ya Allah, continue with this, Ya Allah. Take them out.
Oh, you can't really hear the recording so well, but yeah, what's going on in UK prisons right now? They're basically getting controlled by large Islamic gangs from foreign migrants and things like this that are being thrown into prison. Similar things are happening in France as well. So the fact that he's now trying to expose this because he's been exposed to it himself, and the guards were actually the ones funneling him information inside prison, and now that he's out, they're funneling him information as well, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. And Walker says, "Wow, China too. I didn't know that. Thank you, guy. And I didn't know that they were working together to do that. I need to see more info about that."
Yeah,
maybe
because China is actually really the big beneficiary of all of this.
Mm-hmm. So basically, what allowed them to.
Yeah, especially now when they're so interlocked with Russia and they're trying to get the majority of their natural resources from Russia. It really worked out well for them. Mm-hmm. So.
And next, apparently, Stephen Miller just ended this CNN reporter's career. She wasn't prepared for Miller.
Hey, I just found this clip amusing, and this girl just, every time she can't keep her mouth shut, she can't just ask a normal question. She has to put her liberal progressive spin on it and try to have a gotcha moment, and she keeps getting got.
Do you think a judge should just rubber stamp what your White House does? If not, what checks and balances do you think should be in place for this White House?
It is not the job of a district court judge to perform an individual green light or red light on every single policy that the president takes as the head of the executive branch. Just think about the premise baked into your question, respectfully, Pam. You're saying that when the American people elect a president of the United States of America,
I'm not saying
well, it's the implication, who is the sole head of the executive branch. Well, let me finish. I will answer the question happily. But look, when you have these kinds of lazy assumptions built into questions, it makes it hard to have a constructive dialogue.
What is a lazy assumption? I said you all had to win.
You said no. You said is it my expectation?
I'm speaking because now you're putting.
You said is it my expectation? It's not just you. It's the whole media. In other words,
I know you want to loop this on. It is a completely fair question. You say judges rule against the White House.
And I will gladly answer it. When you say, do we think district court judges should rubber stamp each action? There is a premise that is built into that is absurd. The president is the sole head of the executive branch. He's the only officer in the entire government that's elected by the entire American people.
And this is a good point he's about to make. So you can't have 700 judges questioning every single thing the president does. He's the executive. He runs. His executive order supersedes these judges. These are activist judges, literally trying to put up roadblocks at every turn. So what he wants to do is he wants the Supreme Court to actually make a ruling on this, and that's been the game plan for a long time. Steve Bannon was talking about this the other day. So.
Democracy cannot function. In fact, democracy does not exist at all if each action the president takes, foreign policy, diplomatic, military, national security, has to be individually approved by 700 district court judges. That's democracy. So if there's 15 communist crazy judges on the court, that each of them as a team working together can block and freeze each and every executive action.
But it also doesn't work, and I was talking about that in Spanish, if all the judges work for the president and for the party that's in power. That also doesn't work. It's supposed to be impartial.
Yeah, okay. We agree to disagree.
You don't think judges should be impartial?
No, I think judges should be impartial, but the way in which judges are appointed, if you have a consolidation in power within the government, and then the government's the one appointing the judges, that's just as bad as voting for judges.
In a perfect world, I mean,
I would rather vote for judges. I know you don't like that, but
I don't think anybody likes that in Mexico, because we're going to see the results of what's going to happen.
Yeah, but I think both ways are going to be equally corrupt.
Yes.
So
that's the problem.
Okay, let's continue to go.
So to Pride. This is from Idaho 6 News. Boise Pride cancels season kickoff, citing insufficient attendance. So Boise won't have a Pride kickoff. Yeah, that was important for some reason.
This isn't just Boise. This is happening all over. These policies that Trump has implemented about DEI and things like this, and defunding USAID, is having massive implications on a global scale. You're seeing Pride in Canada. They're talking about it may have to be canceled. They're $700,000 short if they do in Toronto, which is one of the biggest prides in Canada. If it does go forward, it's going to happen on a much smaller scale.
Mm-hmm. We've also seen a lot of brands not putting up their typical, profile pictures with rainbows.
Google, Home Depot, they're all pulling out of the Canadian Pride funding. These major American corporations are the ones that were funding a lot of this Pride garbage on a global scale. And why am I calling it garbage? Because we used to live right downtown, so we were basically forced in these Pride events. Yes. You're having naked men dressed like dogs with these dog heads on, with children standing there clapping. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of S&M gear in front of children, and children are in the parade with them.
Just in the public street, like in the public way.
It's just crazy.
Yes.
Now, if you take the children out of the thing and maybe make it a non-sexualized public event, okay. The entire thing is overly sexualized and it's overly attached to children.
When I was speaking about it in Spanish, in Canada, it's not Pride Month, it's not Pride Week, Pride Day, it's Pride Season. So it's all of summer. It's from June to September. Like they've completely, and even then I was also saying you used to work as a photographer for schools sometimes, and in the schedules, every single almost week there was some event for the alphabet community, which it's a takeover. It's all year now. Yeah, there's no escaping.
I didn't have a chance to get it, but earlier we were talking about the Polish elections, and this is the new move I think you need to do if you're running an election against somebody that's very pro-LGBTQ and very pro-globalist. Basically what he did is he took the gay pride flag and he gave it to him and he goes, "That's your flag. This is mine." And he held up the Polish flag, and the guy can't throw down the pride flag, otherwise he's going to be disgraced by the left. And so now you have this image of the one guy holding the pride flag and the other guy holding the flag of the country, which was Poland at the time.
And a lot of these countries, the States, Canada, when they switch over to pride flags from, their normal flags, it does look like a conquered country or city or whatever. Like Vancouver used to look like a conquered city.
Well,
when Pride season was on.
I was looking at this. I look at the X and try to gather stories as you're on your previous show, and they had the Boy Scouts of America marching with 5 U.S. flags and 10 Pride flags in the Gay Pride March, which is crazy.
Well, they now, Girl Scouts of America now allows boys in there, so we know where they're headed. But yes, Toronto says our festival will go on, says executive director, as Google, Home Depot drop Pride Toronto sponsorship. And I think a lot of these companies are also like Disney, being able to read the tea leaves. They saw that Donald Trump got elected on a lot of these same issues, and they're starting to understand, well, maybe now we do want to sell sneakers to the entire population, not just half, and that Republicans also buy sneakers, as Michael Jordan used to say, and they're realizing that they're tanking and that you go broke, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and a lot of the backlash that was happening in the United States, because these are a lot of the American companies are the ones funding a lot of this because they have the most money to fund all this, and they're doing it on a global scale. But when the Dylan Mulvaney thing happened, a lot of countries backed off of a lot of their Pride advertising in the United States, but a lot of that funding went right into Canada. But a lot of that
and Mexico too.
But a lot of that stuff was discovered, and it resulted in a lot of cancellations of companies and people within the United States. So now they're very wary, especially because they know they're being looked at for cancellation, not just by the general public, but by the government itself.
And I've been keeping an eye on stuff happening in Mexico and what Mexican companies, because I had seen them kind of starting to go all in last year, the year before. So I keep an eye out to also see what Mexico is doing, if they're maybe pivoting towards Mexico, because as we know, and I did a whole video about this in Spanish, the HRC, or the Human Rights Campaign, which used to be the ones that would fund a lot of this and essentially blackmail companies into following like the human rights campaign is not about human rights. It's about just LGBTQ advocacy, essentially, within companies. And whatever company wouldn't go along with it, they'd get like a bad mark. And it was essentially an ESG score, but for the alphabet community. And I think a lot of companies have now said this is no longer worth it to abstain from being normal.
Well, they're completely getting rid of these ESG scores and these DEI scores and things like this, which were really put forth by the globalist government, but really the backbone of it lied within the United States, because a lot of these were U.S. companies. So the U.S. government was going to have to really apply the pressure to these companies. And now that Trump's in, he's doing the exact opposite. He's applying pressure for these companies to act in their own best interest and in their investors' best interest, rather than these activists' best interests.
And Rafa says, Boy Scouts with gay flags, this should be a tremendous red flag for parents.
Yeah.
It's a red flag, yes. They should just carry around red flags.
And the Boy Scouts don't have the best history.
No.
With their what do you call Boy Scout fathers or whatever? I don't know what you would call it.
Leaders?
Yeah,
I actually was a leader for Girl Scouts, not Girl Scouts, for Girl Guides of Canada for a little bit. I used to volunteer with them.
And that's back when you were woke.
They've gone insane.
Okay, let's keep going.
Breaking. So Mark White TV says breaking more than 500 small boat migrants have crossed the channel illegally on Saturday, with hundreds more in French waters in what could become a new record day of arrivals this year. And it's the same day that
it ended up becoming a record that day, which was 1,200 migrants, and it ended up being more than 500 small boats. And it was the same day Keir Starmer tried to virtue signal that he's stopping this. This is no more. Or Brexit. No,
this experiment doesn't work.
You've rejoined the EU without a vote at the table, and you're still allowing migrants in. You're just paying lip service to the British people because you control the media, and you're hoping that they don't see this on independent media.
Oh, there's no sound. So it's just a boat.
And there was a bunch of boats on beaches pulling up as well. This one was more of like a organized government boat where it seems like they're transporting them in. But there was massive boats on beaches coming in on this day. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go into what do we got next? We got a couple, two stories left. We won't go to RU and BLE today. What? Because there's not any more stories left.
Yes. So the BBC claims that forests are losing their ability to soak up carbon dioxide, which could be contributing to record levels of warming gas in the atmosphere.
This is what I was talking about, Ursula von der Leyen talking about we have to pre-bunk things. They are getting desperate and they are telling desperate lies. There are currently more trees on the globe than there have ever been in the past couple hundred years because we are releasing so much carbon in the air. Trees breathe from carbon, so they're growing faster. There's growing more of them. If you look at green maps, the amount of greenage on the Earth's surface is tremendous right now.
And through studies.
Yeah.
So this is from Wide Awake Media, BBC.
Global efforts to tackle climate change are wildly off track, says the UN, as new data shows that warming gases are accumulating faster than at any time in human existence. Researchers are also worried that forests are losing their ability to soak up carbon, which could be contributing to record levels of warming gas in the atmosphere, with more than a third of tree species facing extinction. Helen Briggs reports.
Trees are vital to help clean the air we breathe, soak up carbon emissions and provide a home for thousands of different birds, mammals and insects. Yet it's been revealed...
I don't want to get hit with a copyright strike. But yeah, what they're trying to claim is massive amounts of trees are going extinct and things like this. So, but if you notice, the climate alarmism she's using was much like the other clip we used with the Asian guy, which they're just getting desperate and they're having to use more and more radical language to try to strike fear into people's heart. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, they were really so linked with feminism and women's voting, and their minds were made up on an emotional basis. That's why if they can strike fear into women's hearts, they have half the voter block. Mm-hmm. Men are a lot smarter for the most part. So they use logic rather than fear-based emotion.
That more than a third of trees around the world are in trouble. Experts here at Kew worked on the latest Extinction Red List, which found deforestation is a major threat to life on Earth.
38% of the world's trees are threatened with extinction, more than all the threatened mammals, birds, amphibians and reptiles added together. So a huge number of species, and these are found all across the world. In 192 countries, there is a threatened tree species.
She can barely breathe. Like, what's more worrying is your weight and your inability to walk up a little path without being short of breath. That's what's threatening your existence, not what you're trying to make up.
There's work to do everywhere.
Extinction list is an ever-growing tally of living things.
And let's just talk about this extinction list. How do you get an extinction list? This is how they just expand and they start researching more and more. So they may not have been researching all the trees that were going extinct. They want to try to make a claim that trees are dying on a mass scale, but they're not. What they're saying is, oh, they're going extinct. Yeah, now that you're researching it, they may have been going extinct for a long time. Mm-hmm. And different breeds and things like that. But there are more greenage on the Earth's surface than ever before. So even if certain trees are going extinct, the other ones are making up for it.
And usually, I mean, not always, but it tells you a lot, and that's how sometimes I figure out who to listen to. If the person you're listening to is the expert and is telling you what to do with your life or what's going to happen or whatever, and you don't respect the way, or they don't seem as someone that takes care of themselves or cares about, I don't know, how they look or whatever.
Well, but if
if a doctor is fat, I won't listen to that doctor. Honestly.
If trees are going so extinct, what happened with that Bill Gates thing where they're burying trees?
Oh yeah, there's too many trees that.
One minute the trees are going extinct.
There's too many
the next
trees.
minute we need to bury the trees.
Yes. Cut them and then bury them. That's what they wanted to do.
Their own research debunks their own research, and just use common sense in the end of the day,
And just let all research come to the surface, not just the one the scientific elite allows.
And I got the last story this morning, and I just wanted to kind of show it because We can talk a little bit about it after, I guess.
So Mount Etna erupts as large plumes rise from volcano.
And this is in Italy, I believe.
You want to watch it?
Yeah. Oh, hopefully there's no advertisements.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there we go.
Okay, and this is a bigger story than we might think because there's been actually a huge surge in earthquakes this year, specifically around the Pacific Rim, mainly on the Asian side of the Pacific Rim, but there also been a lot of active volcanoes. This is one of them, but the largest underwater volcano is just 200 miles off the coast of Oregon. It's expected to explode, and it could activate a chain of other volcanoes underwater or earthquakes along the coast of California and Mexico. We talked about that a few months ago. Not much has come of that yet, but just the fact that there is a surge of earthquakes and volcanoes this year, that's a lot more than normal.
But then I also ask, again, kind of like with the planes and with the flooding and with a lot of these stories, the fires, is it that there's an increase or is it that they're reporting the increases more often because it's scary?
Well, no, because along the Pacific Rim, they
I know, but those have been
a lot.
exploding for forever.
No, I'm talking about earthquakes. I've been following earthquakes over the last 5 years since we moved to Mexico very closely.
But remember that those blips were actually pretty normal before?
What?
The earthquakes that were happening were actually, there was a very big one, but that was like 2 years ago.
No, there was a huge one. There's been a lot of huge earthquakes this year. So I'm talking 7s and 8s. Yeah.
But underwater, underground.
No.
Where? Well, we had that Thailand one. That was last year.
That one and
Thailand, Vietnam.
That's why I said they're all happening in Asia right now. Yeah. So there's massive earthquakes that are happening. They're just happening in Asia, which if you think the government can control
So stay safe.
the weather and stuff like that, that would be interesting. Okay. We're done for today.
So Rafa says, I just saw news about celebrities who demanded Trump's government to support ending themselves treatment for gays. And he said, and your good friend Pedro Pascal was among them, Nat. So apparently celebrities, let me look it up. Celebrities are demanding, British demand Trump anti-offing themselves.
So this would be like the MAID program.
Oh yeah, Pedro Pascal. No, so they're against it. Hold on. So they want.
Throw it on the screen.
I'm
here.
looking for it. Hold on. Just the first one, whatever. It's from 9 hours ago. So apparently, Pedro Pascal, Sabrina Carpenter, and more demand funding for LGBTQ plus youth, ending of life prevention. An open letter signed by more than 100 celebrities comes amid reports of planned budget cuts by the Trump administration, I'm guessing to mental health services. So they're all signing. So once again, this is fear-mongering. It's the whole, all the kids, first it was the trans kids, now it's everybody, because everybody is on the verge of offing themselves.
And if this was Canada, they would be wanting funding for the MAID program,
Yeah,
so these LGBTQ kids could offer themselves.
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends, but it's all to go against, obviously, Trump. It's all to fearmonger the actual gay youth that now think that, by talking so much about it, they're actually putting it in their heads and making them believe that that might be something one day that could happen to them, which is not true.
And Mel Gibson, he's making Hollywood great again. It's him. Well, it's an actual thing. John Voight, Mel Gibson, and there was one other gentleman. Anyway, Mel Gibson came out with a statement yesterday, I believe. I should have got it for a clip, but he was talking specifically about Pedro Pascal and how he's completely going in the wrong direction of what Hollywood should be going. So that's good to hear.
So apparently in an open letter published Monday by the non-for-profit organization, the Trevor Project, which I need to make a video about them because they're very similar to the HRC and what their actual thing is. The stars are calling for the protection of $50 million in federal funding to maintain the life-saving mental health programs, which actually causes people to, young kids, to want to transition, to want to... mental health actually pushes people towards less mental health and to cause irreparable harm and damage to their organs, themselves, and their genitals. Sorry.
I just don't trust these government programs when it comes to the LGBT community. Where's that money going to go? It's going to go to anti-suicide or anti-whatever.
We can't say that word. Yep.
Is it? Or are you going to try to fast track these kids onto puberty blockers by telling them they're
That's
the
the
wrong
thing.
gender?
By gender affirming care, and then they actually start believing that this is good for them.
They come in for help for not offing themselves, and then you start putting questions and thoughts in their head. Next thing you know, they're transitioning. Why am I saying like?
Which actually increases the risk of offing themselves.
And this thought process in my head isn't so radical because, the Canadian government was telling veterans when they were calling their helpline for not offing themselves, they were trying to fast track them into the MAID program.
Yeah, to help them off themselves.
Which is medical
Don't
assisted.
do it. We'll help you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't liked and subscribed, please do
and
so.
Rafa says that was based guy. And yes, Pedro Pascal, insufferable as he is, once again gives us a reason to be more annoyed at him. But yeah, tonight we won't be going to RUMBLE, but please do like, subscribe. We hate saying that, and we always forget. But thank you for being here, Walker, Rafa, everybody else. We'll be here tomorrow again at 9 Central, 9:15 Central Time, 8 p.m. in Spanish with me, and then 12 Central with Guy during the evening.
We have 3 shows daily, one at 12 noon, one at 8 p.m., and then one at 9:15.
So he thinks he can do that better than I can. But now you heard it twice. So
well, you went backwards for some reason.
I did go backwards. Because I started with this one and then went to the next ones. Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
Adios.
Goodbye.